It was Friday, February the 28th, 1975, and it was rush hour. And as usual, the London Underground 1938 stock train, number 272, was full of people going to work. It was directly into the City of London, ending at Moorgate Station, which was basically a dead-end tunnel.
My name is Douglas Simpson Thompson. I was born in Banff on the 25th of April 1930. I went to London and spent about 40 years there. I was a professional singer and I ended up in stockbroking. Busy life in London. It was very, very busy. I was living in Highbury, New Park, and I was travelling to work by the tube. It happened to be a dreadful day. This was the day that the train crashed. The train came in and I got into the front carriage. We're in the front carriage and it was absolutely packed. And Jim, he lived, I think, in Walthamstow. And I forget which line it was, but the train came in and he came rushing through the tunnel to get on the train. And I said to Jeff, oh no, I better go with Jim. And he and I ran into the fifth carriage.
At 8:46, people noticed on the train that it was going too fast as it was coming over what's called the crossover. As it was entering Moorgate Station, there was literally only seconds left to stop that train. Unfortunately, nobody pulled the emergency handle and the train carried on straight into the wall.
I'm sure that everybody's been killed, especially in the front carriage. I find it quite upsetting talking about it. It was such a long time ago, and everything, fun enough, is so vivid when I talk about it, which isn't very often.
My name's George McMurdy. I'm originally born in London, 1969. First memory is school. Obviously not a normal day. A teacher or the secretary for the headmaster came into the classroom. I would say probably between 11 and 12 o'clock that day, requesting for myself to come to the headmaster's office. I don't feel that I was ever told at the time that my dad had died. I certainly can't recall being told that he'd died, but I can remember what was being said and what was on the TV. And I do remember the phone going and my granddad smashing his head against the wall and just screaming. I used to use this station to change and from the overground line, which was the old Highbury branch line, to the northern line to go to Belsize Park or Hampstead. So all that time I was using the platform, not knowing that that's where Dad died. So. Probably as empty as that tunnel right now. I was actually even shocked when I found out where the accident occurred. Because as a kid I'd actually been travelling to that platform every day for a year, not knowing that my dad had died there. So that was a shock in itself. My memory starts of my family the day my dad died, unfortunately. I don't have anything to remember past. There seems to be some block for some reason that I can't go beyond that day in 1975. I have tried to jog my memory by going back to places that I would have been in at that time, later on in life, but it didn't cause me to be able to break that block. So unfortunately I can't really say what it was like before the 28th of February 1975.
My name's Richard Jones, I'm 33 years old and I'm in the Royal Navy. I research forgotten disasters when I'm got time on my hands. Although 39 years have passed, they still haven't got that answer. It's the answer that they want. Not so much the cause, but what was covered up. A lot of people get to the point of where the mind starts working overtime, that they get little niggling questions, they hear the rumours, they hear the conspiracies, and unless you really dig deep into where that rumour has come from, you know, your mind will never be satisfied.
When I first read the report, there was probably a bit of hatred towards the driver because they seemed to point the blame to him. And obviously you do look for someone to blame, and it was so easy to blame him because he was the one at the controls of the train and put it into the wall. Your mind just wants to be satisfied about what had gone on, and obviously when I started to find bits and pieces out about what had gone on, it was a lot different to what I'd been led to believe as growing up as a child.
Bit emotional actually. It's 40 odd years since I stood down here. I didn't come back to Moorgate Station for probably a good 20 years. I just didn't want to come back. And then I had a visit to the Guildhall for some personal business, and we came into Moorgate Station, and it was really quite a strange feeling. My name's Tim Hatton. I was a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade based at Clapham Fire Station, and on the morning of the Moorgate disaster we were mobilised to stand by at one of the city stations. On the way there we got diverted straight on to Moorgate Station as the incident had obviously been declared a major disaster.
The original toll was put at, once they had recovered all the bodies 4 days later, the toll was put at 41, 2 more survivors died later, making 43. There were around 80 people injured. I think the inquiry said 76. The train was packed, and the last few carriages, some people didn't even know there'd been a collision. So, you know, there were people, you know, the last carriages, there were no one even injured. There were a few people thrown around, and they just thought, you know, thanks for braking late, you know. And they just went off and went to work.
Well, the impact, first of all, of the crash was dreadful, but I was okay. After the initial crash, there was all this terrific sort of red smoke and dirt and stuff, and I thought, it's going to go on fire. And fortunately, the doors opened, and Jim and I, we rushed out, and it was just deathly quiet. And all this awful red dust and things, and no, I heard no crying, screaming, or anything. It was weird.
You know, we came down the tunnel, came down into the tunnel, and there was lights on, people everywhere. You couldn't quite believe what you were seeing. It was really quite surreal, and it was just like a great big film set.
And the firefighters had an incredible task of not just trying to reach them, but trying to get them out alive with as little injury sustained as possible. Because the wreckage was completely twisted, smashed up, concertinaed and squashed into such a small area. So they had to figure out not only where they were, but how to get to them.
My name's Ken Thrower, and my father, Thomas Thrower, he was killed here in the disaster. I think in a way that helped me when it happened. I did talk a lot about it, and I think it was my way of unloading. Still talk about it, still get emotional. Like I say, it'd be raw to the end of my life. And
I've always been of the opinion that it was suicide, but no one seems to agree with that. Most people say that, no, one person would not involve all these people.
the driver's family are lovely people. I met them at the memorial, and they were really nice people, and they've lived with a bit of a stigma. Certain rumours have been pushed around. Well, I can say categorically that that guy was completely innocent. It's come to my attention that the whole thing wasn't cleared up properly, and I just know from things I've heard that that guy was as innocent as the 42 other people that were in that train.
In my investigation in the last few years, and this is also speaking to experts, has led me to believe that the cause of the crash was an epileptic seizure by the driver. In June 1974, the driver, Leslie Newsom, went to the aid of a woman who was being attacked on the train. When he tried to intervene, he was hit over the head and suffered cuts and bruises to his face. And although he was checked out of the hospital nearly 40 years ago, they didn't have the technology now to see if there's any hidden damage. Now, judging by eyewitnesses and the reports that have been released into the crash, suggest that he was in full control of that train. He was staring straight ahead, and he made no attempt whatsoever to put his hands up to protect himself from the collision, which anybody, even driving a car into a wall or anything like that, they would automatically shield the face.
I don't believe the driver was at fault in any way. I don't believe he had any medical condition. I believe the poor driver realised he couldn't stop that train.
There are a lot of rail disasters. Moorgate is Britain's 7th worst. And a lot of the rail crashes, the driver dies. A lot of other disasters, especially plane crashes, it's put down to pilot error. And a lot of the time the pilots aren't there to defend themselves. There's a lot of mysteries with a lot of disasters. Ships that go missing out at sea. Even things like the Titanic, 100 and odd years later. There are people who are not here to defend themselves. There are unanswered questions. my work's going to go on for my entire life. I'm hoping there are other disasters out there that have been lost to history that I'll come across, and I'll be able to hopefully bring that to light and clear their names and tell their stories, because otherwise, if you don't learn from these disasters, they're going to happen again and again.
It was a surreal moment in life that fortunately you do not see very often.
Basically, I believe that I was naughty and wasn't doing as I was told that morning, and caused him to be late. And that's how he ended up getting this train and not the normal one. It's probably the longest I've ever spent on this platform. In a weird sense, it's probably the closest I've ever been to my dad before.
I'm not a very religious person. I go to church, but I always think there's a power there, and I was saved from that crash.